help the network share information with one another and make introductions to one another. So that now we got to 2016 with these 32 communities. See? So we created a history of the future. I told the history as if I was in the moment of 2016 and walked back to it. So what we're going to do, and it's a very helpful thing. Why? Because then, while you're telling the history, you say, oh, yeah, right, I should start thinking about that. Now, that's an interesting thing. I should probably deal with this issue. And you start branching out so that when you're in a meeting with someone and say, so this is the thing that investors and also potential partners always love to ask. They say, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? Thinking that, we're all Mao and we have an idea for a great leap forward. Well, that didn't really work. So, but everyone always asks, where do you see yourself in 5? Where is this going? You should have that vision, not because it's actually going to happen, because that lays the groundwork for the actions that you start to think about right now. So let's break up back into those groups. Yeah.
Is the context for this exercise practicing communication? Oh, hello.
Computer delivered.
Can I leave?
No.
That was
Okay.
perfectly
Manager
timed, by the
announcement.
way.
Everybody except my wife. Is the context for this practicing communication, as in refining the story, or is it consensus building, as in working to define a vision?
Very good question. The context for this is developing your vision. And that is when we teach this to entrepreneurs or to program professionals, developing your vision that you will then be able to build consensus around. Not the communications part. It doesn't have to be shiny and glossy and marketing languagey. The idea needs to be what actually the organization could look like 5 years from now and what happened in order to get it there.
Have you ever seen the AT&T commercials that do this? You may be the only one in the room who hasn't, I'm guessing. There's an AT&T commercial starts with the president giving a speech and his parents are sitting behind him and they're proud, and it rewinds back to them being on separate trains and seeing each other and changing their tickets on their mobile phone so they can get onto the same train.
Wow.
You should Google it later. It would be a good teaching tool here.
Take one project from the groups that you're already in, do a quick history of the future just so you get to understand the way that it works, share that with one another, and then we'll come back together. So, with his network of people working on GeltRush, he was able to import all of this data into the calendar, and then it became a social resource for people to not only keep track of deadlines, but also to see, okay, well, is my grant area the most appropriate for this? And by 2015, all these hundreds of thousands of kids who were coming back from Birthright were now plugged into the world of funding and were able to get more information about things that they were passionate about pursuing and how to fund them. So I would be a lot more convinced if you started off with that last part and then told the history of it. And that's why the history of the future is helpful. That is, what I heard was more what you're seeking to do, and not what the world's going to look like and why I, as a person who's not you, would be interested in it. So if you said in 2015, the tens of thousands of young professionals who are coming back from Birthright are told at the last day of their trip that this is just the beginning, and that all they need to do is to go onto GeltRush and find all the opportunities for scholarships and grants and fellowships, and from there they can take what they've learned and make it into reality. And how do we get there? Well, 2 years before, the Jewish Funders Network signed on to be a partner of GeltRush, got its members involved, You see what I'm saying? Why? Because you're starting from the promised land. You're starting from the world that actually sounds pretty cool. Yes, I, as a person hearing this, would want that to exist. Well, that's great. So how do you get there? And then everything else comes from there, right? It's the same thing with saying, like, I use, let's use Nike as an example, right? So I'm never going to be a pro athlete, never. Seeing a pro athlete using Nike products, though, does make me feel that I have something to aspire to, right? Why? Because if they're using it, well, they probably know what they're doing, so maybe I want to be able to get there too, right? You see what I'm saying? By being able to paint that picture of where one could get to, and then bringing them forward to that, helps identify all the different elements that need to be in place in order to make it happen, right? And then identify the target populations that need to be addressed. So if you know that the goal, the vision that you're providing is that by 2015, you're going to have tens of thousands of young Birthright professionals who are coming and signing up, Well, you know that you need to somehow tell them about it, which means that you need to get birthright involved, which means that you need to get, and so on and so forth. So that's the way that you tell your history. Now, the history of the future is very important in intelligence, in the way that nations or businesses conduct operations. This is called walking back the cat. That is, it's coming to a conclusion, and then trying to figure out how you get to that conclusion. It's very helpful because it allows you to identify unknown unknowns. And mainly here, known unknowns at first, and then sometimes unknown unknowns. Because what it does is it identifies holes in your story, and then you have to go into those holes. And that's helpful from a business perspective, from a planning perspective, and developing a vision perspective, because it makes you have to grapple with all the reasons of why people will get involved, and who gets involved, and who's benefiting from it, and how they're benefiting from it. And that goes to the main kind of questions of this exercise, and the visioning process in general. The first one is, what's wrong with this current world? Why should people change the world that they're already used to and adapted to and fine with, and start something else? Is it really that bad? And in this case, we're saying, yes, it is that bad, right? And so then the issue is, if your venture could boil down its existence to that one thing, getting people out of Egypt to the promised land, what is it? What is that one thing? What's that one bottom line element? What are you looking for to see whether it's positive or negative in order to decide that it's worth going ahead with? Then finally, who do you need to get involved? Who are you selling to? Who are the people that are going to be giving you value in return for the value that they receive? And those are the people that are marching and how they're marching. Why would they march? Why do they care about the promised land? Why is Egypt challenging to them? And so by being able to address those questions, you get to a place where you can, on a more enhanced way, deal with the venture itself. Right? You diverge from your immediate idea. So, balcony, this is what we do with the fellows. Then we say, so here's your deliverable. So here's your deliverable. The deliverable is to express, using any variety of media, written, a website, a video, what have you, the Egypt, Promised Land, and March concept. Boil down your venture. Tell us what's the challenge that they're dealing with. What's the market that they're operating in? What's the context for the opportunity? Then, what's going to happen? What's the bottom line? What's the actual effect on the world going to be? And who are the people you're addressing, and why are they going to be part of it? And so a fellow balcony would go after this and start working on the deliverable. 2 weeks after this workshop, they'd submit their deliverable to their coach. Their coach would read or view what it is that they're providing, and then work with them on asking them a bunch of questions about the deliverable itself. And so here's the last thought on this. You got to dream it. That is, starting off with a haze is natural. Most entrepreneurs have an idea, and they're not really sure about the details. And they're going to figure it out as they go along, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But the more that you can expand the dream, the more that you can expand the vision and let other people partake in the vision, in that dream, the more resources will be available in order to deal with the details. And that's the Herzl analogy back again. That is, he had an idea for the details. That was the Jewish state. He went through all the different elements of how the state would run and what it would look like, and then he painted a picture all the way into the future, and he told the history of that future with Alt Neuland, the old new land. But when he brought people together, he let them figure it out themselves. The difference between a dream and a vision is a vision is a dream with a work plan attached to it. That is, on that basic level, it's here's what we want to do, and here's ideas of how to get there, and we want you to plug in and be able to help us get there. And getting people, whether you're a for-profit or a non-profit, getting people to believe in that vision and to buy into that vision and to give valuable things towards helping that vision forward is the goal of any entrepreneur. Because whether you're selling widgets or you're feeding children, you need to get people to believe that you're going to be operating in a market context that you're aware of, that you're going to be making a positive bottom line at the end of the day, that you're going to be serving a population that wants to be served in the way that you're serving. So building that vision in such a way that people can see the different elements of it, project it to the future, understand what could happen, and then be part of it as you grow is a crucial element to starting off any venture. Startups are driven by dreams on a fundamental level. They might not be clear, they certainly change a whole lot, but it's that dream which keeps people together through the hard times and certainly propels them forward in the good times. So balcony, that's the visioning workshop. It's the first element of inspiration. From this point forward, the fellow has the tools to be able to start off the process of the deliverable. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a break for lunch. And then we're going to come back to the second part of visioning, which is sharing one's vision, using social media tools and other opportunities to do so. So before we break, yeah, questions?
Yeah, again, apologies for any ignorance here about the process. So in this kind of evolution, there's always a transition. What does the last question mean?
How's the organization taking you for the ride?
In a good sense or a bad sense?
Both. What was the last organization you believed in? How they brought you along with them? In a good way or a bad way?
I'm just going to annoy you. And I forget. Thank you.
All right. Who wants to share about the last way you learned about an organization you care about? Anybody care about an organization in this room? One that you're not running or not the leadership of. People are nodding their heads, but who wants to raise their hand? Anyone? Raise your hand. That's looking in one direction, another direction. Or anyone else want to share an organization you care about? Please.
Okay. I would say Limud Southeast is an organization I care about. When I first learned about the organization through the website, but then I really only started to care when I actually met the people who like introduced themselves and I felt a connection with them. And so then it sort of took me a few months from like kind of knowing about Limud to like caring, meeting people. And yes, it has taken me along for the ride.
How have they done so?
They have, well, first I was a participant, and then I'm now a volunteer, and in fact, I'm now kind of leading of the team. And
what was actually done along the way in terms of actions? How did you learn about a participating experience?
I had somebody, one of the founders, come and meet me out at a club when we were going to a J-Dub show. And he showed up, which was very impressive. And then we met and we connected, and it seemed like somebody that was my kind of person.
And then after that was all your interaction person to person?
And then I was participating in like the actual event, which is like a retreat over a weekend. So I developed relationships with people there. And then it was through those relationships that afterward they came to me and said, hey, would you like to, we would love to have you help produce this event. And I said yes. So it was through the relationship.
So there isn't a better way to put it. There's a saying that there are good questions, there are great questions. Good questions are questions that highlight something that we need to talk about. Great questions are questions that set up the next slide. So that was a great answer to a question. On a basic level, that's what transmedia theory is all about. That is recognizing that relationships are the core.